every immortal dreams of one thing mortals take for granted: the right to leave. Most gods clung to the world. They fought for it, manipulated it, bled for their place in it. But one goddess did something none of the others would dare. She looked at humanity, at everything it had become. And she walked away. Not in rage, not in punishment, in grief. And then she chose something no goddess was supposed to choose. She chose death over divinity. Her name was Astraea. And the story of how she became the constellation Virgo is not a story about fertility or harvest or maternal love. It is a story about justice abandoned and the price of holding impossible standards in a world that stopped deserving them. If you've seen the Demeter and Persephone episode on this channel, you know Virgo's most popular mythological link. It's a beautiful story. The earth dying and being reborn with the seasons, a mother's grief written across the calendar. But that story is about the body of the world, the soil, the grain, the cycle of life. Astraea's story is about something harder to hold on to. She was the goddess of justice and innocence, daughter of Zeus and Themis in most traditions, though some sources place her lineage differently. Where Demeter gave humanity bread, Astraea gave humanity something more fragile, a conscience. She was the last immortal to live among humans, not on Mount Olympus, not in a temple. She walked among people during the Golden Age, when gods and mortals still shared the same world. She mediated disputes. She taught the principles of right and wrong. She believed, genuinely believed, that humanity was capable of choosing justice on its own. That belief would cost her everything. Greek cosmology divided human history into 4 ages, each one a step further from the divine and deeper into moral collapse. In the Golden Age, there was no need for law. Humans lived peacefully, honestly, without violence or greed. Astraea walked openly among them. Then came the Silver Age. Zeus shortened the summer, lengthened winter, forced humans to build shelters and plant crops. Comforts bred hierarchy. Hierarchy bred envy. The gods began retreating to Olympus. Astraea stayed. The Bronze Age brought war. Men were harder now, violent, territorial. The other immortals were long gone. Still, Astraea remained. She still believed the scales could be balanced, that justice, if you kept teaching it, could hold. Then came the Iron Age. This is where her story breaks. The Iron Age was not just a decline in virtue, it was an inversion of it. Betrayal was strategic, cruelty was efficient. Children turned on parents, hosts murdered guests. The sacred laws of hospitality, kinship, and fairness, the very things Astraea had spent eons trying to preserve, were not just ignored. They were used as weapons. She watched oaths be made for the sole purpose of breaking them. She saw the strong call their violence justice. And at some point, the sources don't agree on when, exactly, she stopped arguing. Here is what most retellings miss about Astraea's departure. It is not described as escape. It is not described as punishment. In Ovid's Metamorphoses and in later astronomical texts like Aratus's Phenomena, her ascent is characterized by a specific Greek word, anachoresis, a withdrawal, a deliberate, sorrowful retreat. She didn't flee, she receded. There is a version of this story, less cited, older, that frames her departure not as abandonment but as sacrifice. The idea that for justice to survive at all, it had to leave the world that was destroying it. That if she stayed any longer, the concept itself would be corrupted, co-opted, turned into the same rhetorical weapon she'd watched humans use on each other. To preserve the principle of justice, she had to remove it from reach. She took her scales with her. But here's the part the myth leaves unanswered, and intentionally so. By leaving, she ended her active role in human affairs. She became unreachable, an ideal rather than a presence. And ideals, unlike goddesses, cannot intervene. Was that a gift? Or the cruelest thing an immortal ever did to humanity? The myth doesn't answer. It places her in the sky, motionless, eternal, watching, and lets you sit with that question. There is a second woman the ancient Greeks associated with Virgo. Her name was Erigone. She was mortal, the daughter of Icarius of Athens, the first man Dionysus taught to make wine. When Icarius shared wine with shepherds who had never tasted it before, they became intoxicated, believed they'd been poisoned, and killed him. Erigone searched for her father with only her dog, Mara, as a guide. When she found his body, She hanged herself in grief at the sight of his grave. She was not a goddess. She made no grand cosmic choice. She was a daughter who lost her father to an act of senseless violence and could not survive the injustice of it. The Greeks commemorated her with a festival, the Iora, in which young women swung on ropes from trees in symbolic mourning. Zeus placed her in the stars as Virgo, Astraea, the goddess of justice who withdrew from a corrupt world, Erigone, the mortal girl who could not accept that the world had failed her father. Two figures, one constellation, both defined by what they could not reconcile between the world as it was and the world as it should have been. Look at a star chart and you'll notice something. Virgo does not sit alone. Directly beside her is Libra, the scales. This is not a coincidence. In ancient Greek astronomy, the scales of Libra were originally Astraea's scales, the ones she carried as the goddess of justice. At some point in the Hellenistic period, they were separated into their own constellation. But for centuries before that, they were hers, the woman and the scales, the judge and the instrument of judgment, placed in the sky together, holding the same position they held on Earth until the Earth stopped deserving them. Every autumn, Virgo rises in the western sky at dusk, and Libra follows. The sequence is still there, written in the same stars, in the same order. If you want to understand Virgo as a zodiac sign, the precision, the standards, the deep discomfort with moral compromise, it is worth remembering what the constellation was built from. Not just a harvest goddess mourning a daughter, but a goddess who watched humanity fail its own ideals for millennia, kept teaching anyway, and eventually had to choose between her own integrity and staying in a world that no longer wanted it. She chose integrity. Whether that was wisdom or abandonment depends on what you think justice is for and who it's supposed to serve.